Ever heard of the British Empire? Yeah, those guys with the fancy accents and crumpets. Well, buckle up, history buffs and history haters, because beneath that civilized veneer lies a story that's more Downton Abbey meets Game of Thrones. Today, we're diving into the not-so-sunny side of history, with a look at the British Empire and some of the most evil things they did. At its peak, the British Empire ruled over a whopping 23% of the world's population and 24% of the Earth's total landmass. That's like if your messy roommate took over your entire apartment, your neighbor's apartment, and then decided the whole building needed a makeover, with questionable wallpaper. That's right. They had their hands in just about every cookie jar around the globe. Now, some might call them bold explorers and global leaders. Others might use words like ruthless colonizers and masters of passive-aggressive tea breaks. The truth? It's probably a messy mix of both. We're going to take a light-hearted but still respectful look at the dark side of the British Empire. Because hey, sometimes laughter is the best medicine. Was it all just tea and crumpets? Or was there a whole lot of oppression and exploitation on the side? Grab your metaphorical cuppa, or a pint, if that's more your style, and get ready for a history lesson that won't put you to sleep, unless you're really tired. Let's get started as we count down from numbers 10 to 1. Stay with us to the end to see how dark and evil it gets. Number 10. Churchill's role in the Indian Famine of 1943. This will make you question everything you thought you knew about Winston Churchill. Back in 1943, Bengal was hit by a devastating famine, killing between 1 to 3 million people. Most blamed it on the British government being too preoccupied with World War II. But hold on to your teacups, because a bombshell book in 2010 suggested something way more sinister. Churchill might have engineered this tragedy on purpose. Allegedly, Churchill refused to divert food from well-fed British troops, claiming it would hurt the war effort. He even blocked American and Canadian aid ships from reaching India and forbade Indians from using their own resources to help. As if that wasn't enough, London jacked up grain prices, making food unaffordable for the starving. And here's the kicker. When Delhi officials begged for help, Churchill reportedly asked why Gandhi hadn't kicked the bucket yet. If true, and some documents suggest it might be, Churchill, the British war hero, could have indirectly caused as many deaths as Stalin did in Ukraine. It's a chilling reminder that even celebrated heroes can have seriously dark sides. Number 9. Irish Famine. If you ever wonder why large parts of Ireland still have a bone to pick with anything British, just take a look at the Irish Famine. Picture this: 1845, Ireland. The potato crop fails, like, completely fails. Millions are starving, but fear not. Britain swoops in to save the day. Well, kind of. They send in this dude named Charles Trevelyan, a man so out of touch, he'd make Ebenezer Scrooge look like a philanthropist. Trevelyan believed the famine was God's punishment for the Irish being, well, Irish. On top of that, he was obsessed with this free market thing, which basically meant the government shouldn't help anyone, ever. So, instead of handing out food, he made the starving Irish build useless roads in exchange for work. Sounds like a good plan, right? Wrong. Here's the kicker. Trevelyan refused to control food prices, which went up faster than a magician's rabbit in a hat. The roads got built, but nobody could afford to eat, because apparently, starving people don't make great construction workers. The result? A cool 1 million Irish folks died. But wait, there's more. Trevelyan then blamed the whole mess on the Irish themselves, launching a PR campaign that basically said, "Hey, it's not our fault you can't eat dirt." This made it even harder for Irish folks who fled the famine to find work. Oh, and the cherry on top? Trevelyan later got awarded for his amazing relief efforts. Seriously, history is wild, folks. Before we move to number 8, if you are enjoying the video, please subscribe to our channel and share the video. It means a lot to us. Thank you. Number 8. The gruesome repression in Kenya. Ever heard of eviction nightmares? Yeah, that awkward moment your landlord kicks you out and changes the locks. Well, multiply that by 1 million, replace your landlord with the British Empire, and swap your apartment for an entire country, and you've got the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya. In the 1950s, the people of Kenya decided they wanted their country back. Still, unfortunately, the landlords they were trying to evict were the same folks responsible for every other atrocity on this list: the British. Terrified of a nationwide rebellion, the Brits corralled 1.5 million Kenyans into concentration camps. What happens inside these camps will make your stomach churn. Under slogans like labor and freedom, inmates were literally worked to death, filling mass graves. Random executions were par for the course, and torture was a daily routine. Men were anally raped with knives. Women's breasts were tortured and hacked off. Captives' eyes were gouged out, and their ears were severed. Guards used coiled barbed wire to lacerate skin, castrated men with pliers, and then sodomized them. Interrogation techniques included stuffing a detainee's mouth with mud and stamping on their throat until they passed out or died. Survivors were sometimes burned alive. The official body count sits at under 2,000. Still, more reliable estimates suggest tens or even hundreds of thousands died. Most of them civilians or children accused of vaguely aiding the rebels. And what was it all for? Absolutely nothing. Kenya gained independence in 1963, leaving the British with neither their African outpost nor their souls. Number 7. The tragic disaster of Boer War concentration camps. Ever heard of a glamping trip? You know, glamorous camping. All the fun of the outdoors with none of the, well, you know what. The British Empire, however, had a different idea during the Boer Wars in the early 1900s. They called it a concentration camp. And let me tell you, it was about as glamorous as a wet sock. So, the British wanted to keep South Africa under their thumbs, and their genius plan? Lock up tens of thousands of innocent Boers, men, women, and especially children, in these glorified cages. Imagine a crowded music festival with zero music, scorching sun instead of flashing lights, and enough flies to make a dung beetle jealous. Food? Scarcer than a happy ending in a horror movie. The guards, about as charming as a rabid badger, would cut rations for even the slightest infraction, like asking for a second helping of gruel. The dream. Combine that with rampant disease, and you've got a recipe for disaster. Women got sick, babies died by the thousands, 22,000 in just 1 year. In fact, 10% of the entire Boer population bit the dust in these camps. Yikes. But wait, there's more. The British weren't exactly fans of equal opportunity misery. They also grabbed 20,000 black Africans and threw them into brutal labor camps. Think Death Race 2000 with even crappier prizes, like, death. The final tally? British policies during the Boer War killed a whopping 48,000 civilians. That's 18,000 more than soldiers who died fighting. Talk about a strategic blunder of epic proportions. Number 6. Treatment of the Aboriginal Tasmanians. During the early 19th century, the British settlers nearly exterminated the indigenous Tasmanian population through violence, disease, and dispossession. When the British arrived in 1803, estimates suggest there were between 3,000 and 7,000 Aboriginal Tasmanians. By 1835, that number had shrunk to just a few hundred. The Aboriginal Tasmanians faced brutal killings, forced removals, and a devastating loss of their lands and culture. Known as the Black War, this period saw the indigenous population plummet from thousands to just a handful of only mixed-race Tasmanians remained, leading to almost complete cultural genocide. The British also implemented policies that forcibly relocated the survivors to isolated areas, further erasing their way of life. This tragic history is a stark reminder of the dark side of colonialism and its devastating impact on indigenous populations. Number 5. The Amritsar Massacre. On April 13, 1919, thousands of peaceful protesters defied a government ban to gather in Amritsar's Jallianwala Gardens to protest British rule. At 4:30 p.m., British troops blocked the exits and opened fire, killing between 379 and 1,000 people in just 10 minutes, and injuring another 2,100. The panic caused a deadly stampede, and over 100 women and children drowned in a well. News of the massacre horrified London, leading to the recall of Brigadier Reginald Dyer. However, the British public bizarrely hailed him as a hero, raising £26,000, about $900,000 today, for him. Dyer died believing his actions were justified. This tragic event is a grim reminder of the brutal impacts of colonialism. It's a grim reminder that sometimes history isn't just strange, it's downright tragic. Number 4. Support for apartheid. Imagine this. While the world was condemning racial segregation, Britain was busy maintaining diplomatic and economic ties with apartheid-era South Africa. That's right. They were shaking hands and trading goods with the architects of apartheid, like it was the most normal thing ever. It's like being best friends with the school bully while everyone else is trying to stand up to him. Not a good look. Despite global outrage and sanctions, Britain kept those ties strong, prioritizing trade and politics over human rights. Number 3. The dark side of British rule in Iraq. We're taking a trip back to 1920 when Iraq had just about enough of British rule. The empire was supposed to guide the new nation towards independence, but instead installed puppet leaders, turning Iraq into a de facto colony. Fed up with their imperial overlords, the Iraqis revolted, and the British responded with a brutal wave of atrocities. The RAF launched nighttime bombing raids on civilian targets, and then came the chemical weapons, gassing groups of fighters. But the real horrors unfolded afterward with collective punishment for the rebellious tribes. Any tribe causing trouble would have one of its villages randomly annihilated. Orders were given to exterminate everything within its gates, including animals, rebels, and children. Villages faced random searches, and if a single weapon was found, the British would burn the place down, destroy crops, poison wells, and kill livestock. They even targeted weddings to terrorize the population. In short, the British waged a nearly half-decade-long war just because a few Iraqis dared to want their country back. Number 2. Slavery. For a hefty chunk of history, from the late 16th century to the early 19th century, Britain was a major player in this horrific trade, transporting an estimated 3.1 million Africans across the Atlantic to the Americas, a staggering number that dwarfs all other European nations combined. Picture this: British ships, backed by the British royal family and the church, crammed with enslaved people, making the brutal Middle Passage. The British royal family and merchants funded these voyages, reaping enormous profits. Even the Church of England was in on it, owning and profiting from slave plantations. Some royals also owned slave plantations. The slave trade wasn't just a side hustle, it was a cornerstone of the British economy, fueling industries like sugar, tobacco, and cotton. The church, while sometimes offering weak condemnations, often turned a blind eye to the practice, focusing instead on converting enslaved people to Christianity. Abolitionists fought hard to end this nightmare, finally achieving victory with the Abolition Act of 1833. But the damage was done, and its legacy is still felt today. It's a stark reminder of the dark side of empire building. Number 1. Colonial exploitation in Africa. Ever wonder why some parts of Africa still raise an eyebrow at Britain? It all goes back to the bad old days of colonialism, from the late 1800s to the mid-1900s. Imagine the British Empire waltzing into Kenya and Nigeria with top hats and promises of civilization. Except, this wasn't a Mary Poppins situation. It was more like a looting spree disguised as a vacation. Brutal treatment of the locals? Check. Shameless resource grabbing that would make a pirate captain jealous? Absolutely. The British basically turned these countries into piggy banks with legs. They treated resources like an all-you-can-eat buffet, leaving locals with nothing but scraps. Forced labor, stolen lands, and zero human rights? The British really outdid themselves in the how low can you go department. It's like the worst reality show ever, where the contestants never signed up but had to endure the horrors anyway. These atrocities remind us that history isn't just about the good and the glamorous. It's filled with dark, disturbing events that we must remember and learn from. What do you think about these historical events? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more eye-opening historical insights. See you next time.